Record. Yay. Is it doing? Yes, it is. Perfect. Okay.
So
Right, let's go. Let's go,
I've
Sean.
got your information here. So it's always helpful to kind of pull out bits that I want to know a bit more about and understand as well. I think Christina's now joining us. So anyway, may as well start with this. So co-sleeping at the moment with babies, 2 babies, amazing. And they're still breastfed, are they, as well, throughout?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
that is an amazing job. Just to start with, breastfeeding to 14 months or 15 and a half months, 14 months adjusted is incredible in any case, let alone with 2 babies. So firstly, we'll give you a medal and we'll just take a baby each for the night maybe and just let you have some sleep. I think maybe that should be how we should proceed. Okay, that's how it would work in other communities. Right, that's how it should be, but there we go. Anyway, we don't have that luxury. So instead you're co-sleeping in a king size bed with a cot with one side pushed up to one side of the bed, the other 2 sides of the bars that your dad made. So 1 twin either side of you, and you sleep in that position and you feed to sleep in that position. Can I just ask, in which case do you roll and feed 1 twin, roll and feed 1 twin? How do you do it? Just let me know.
So they are literally one here and one here, and obviously because they're bigger now, they just have open access. Basically, they just get on, they kind of roll onto my arms, and so there's one there, and I'm like pinned.
Right. Okay.
Quite graphic for the video there. Sorry about that.
That's fine. It wasn't too graphic. You didn't take any clothes off. We're absolutely fine. And yeah, so I'm getting really hot here. I've got the sun right on me in this room, which is lovely, but whew, it's hot. Anyway, so beginning of the night, you usually go 3 to 4 hours, super. And then after that, usually more frequent waking. I mean, in fairness, what I would say is initially that is quite normal. What I would say is also, though, is that towards like the end of, or the sort of into the morning and what have you, there is less, obviously, there's less sleep pressure. There's also less melatonin and, the day is starting, if you like. So I really want you to think initially just about environmental things, okay? Is there any light coming in the room at all? And is there any way that you can stop that? And also, is there any way that any of them are getting cooler at that time? Okay, because often a dip in temperature at that time as well can really change up the wake ups, which might be why that that you're getting those wake ups too. One of the ways to kind of counteract that is actually to put socks on little ones at bedtime. We
do have the heater and it's on all night, so the temperature seems to remain fairly constant in that room. But yeah, maybe I'll make a note of socks.
Anyway. To be aware of, because as the hormones and stuff change throughout the night, we do see dips in temperature and then we see babies waking. So that can be something to try. You said about maybe your movement waking them up. And I mean, certainly we do see parents say that's starting to happen as well. And the thing I just want to kind of know as well is, what are your goals? So, because every parent has a different sleep goal as what they want. Do you want the babies sleeping in with you still, or do you want them out of the bed, or what is it
We basically, I mean, it's not an option for them to be out of the bed. That is the only space that we have at the moment. And I'm happy. I like them being there. I just would like to have a bit more of my own space in the bed so that like I can turn on my side, because sometimes I just can't sleep when I'm stuck on my back. And I just need to change position, and then I can't seem to do that without one of them waking up, and then I have to go back on my back again for them to latch on again. That's the goal, really.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's just trying to determine how we can make that happen in the situation that you're in. So with you feeding as they are, and that's where they settle, that's obviously very, very hard for you to do that. So I think it's going to be settling them into a different space somehow. Now, I've got a couple of suggestions, but it depends whether or not this is something you're open to. Not forgetting also the age of your children as well. So I'm guessing, are they on the move? Are they crawling or even walking yet? Yeah. Okay. So obviously beds we have to be a bit more careful with as well. Do you have space in your room for a floor bed?
We could put the mattress on the floor. The problem is that there's stuff under the bed. Basically, I kind of live in that one room. So most of the stuff I own is in that room. So It's under the bed, it's in all the cupboard-like space around and piled. It's really not a good room at the moment for them. It's not ideal. So we could put it on the floor. We could. It just means asking my parents if I can put lots of stuff at their house, which they might be up for.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking something as simple as, is it possible? So you would have your bed, your space, and a floor bed next to it. So literally just a mattress on the floor, okay? And that could be as simple as a cot bed mattress or something like that. Obviously, so then you wouldn't necessarily need to put your bed on the floor. The idea being is that what you would do is you would settle the babies in their own sleep space. And once they fall asleep, you then move away, okay? And then what you would do is you would work at, every time you settle them, you would settle them back in their sleep space and you would move away. Now, the thing to remember with this, James, when we're making changes, especially overnight changes, the reason you do what you do at the moment is because that's what works. And invariably, it's the quickest thing to getting your babies back to sleep. And that's what we do. And that's fine. It's absolutely fine. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally normal way to feed your babies. And it's enabled you to feed your babies 15 and a half months, which is incredible. So I don't ever want you to think, oh, no, I've created an issue here. You haven't. But it's also okay to get to a point where you're like, this has worked till now, and now I'm ready for some change. But you also have to know that because this has been the easiest way to settle your babies, is that any change is likely initially to cause you to get less rest. Okay, that's not long term, but this is, if we're going to make up some changes, we have to be really realistic. Okay, I'm not someone who's going to say, yeah, you'll do that for a couple of nights and then your baby's will see through and you'll be, everything will be lovely. That isn't realistic. Not if we're making gentle sleep changes. Okay, if not, I would be a millionaire right now with my magic wand. So yeah, one of the things you could start to try and do is to settle the babies. And will they sleep together as well? Do they have a nap together and snuggle up together? Twins often do that.
Yeah, no. At the moment, they are mostly only napping in the buggy. It's been a bit different these last few days because one of them's been poorly. They actually both fell asleep on the feeding cushion yesterday, which they haven't done for a long time. So the nap thing, yeah, either the buggy or the car, basically. Okay. And at night, so sometimes I do move away from between them because I just can't sleep. But they seem to, if one of them wakes up, they just look for the boob. So the other one will be there. The other thing is, when they wake up in the morning, if one wakes up first and the other one's still asleep, they don't like that. They want the other one awake. So I'm not sure how that would be, but I can experiment with that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've got cot beds for them or anything like that, but you could, even if they're not happy together, that's fine. The reason I mentioned some people, the babies, they like to do that, and then they don't want, someone to come in and suggest they're separated. But it could even be that you have 2 cot mattresses or cot bed mattresses on the floor, and you settle each baby back into their own sleep space each time. Okay, because at the end of the day, what's happening at the moment is they're falling asleep, snuggled up with you, waking up, and that's not where they are. It's just, when they're no sleep cycles and stuff. So that's just what they're seeking. So it's just kind of working towards something that's perhaps going to be more sustainable for you longer term. Like I said, the reason I tend to say a floor bed is that they're not going to be rolling off anywhere, or at the most they're going to roll off and fall asleep in a corner of a room. You mentioned obviously stuff being in the room, so just make sure it's not things like wires, anything that's going to be dangerous, that kind of stuff. Okay, obviously they're a bit bigger now anyway, but still obviously need to be careful about that kind of thing. All the other things to make sure as well, if any cords or anything like that, if you've got any cords, they don't actually make them like that anymore, but I kind of roll a blind and stuff like that in the room, just cut them. Okay, so anything like that said, if you've got crawling babies on the floor.
Entrance 18 or over. First close on Friday.
Are you able to oh. There we go. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, it just cuts in there otherwise. Okay, so that's a suggestion there for you, Jane, to try. Okay. We mentioned last time, I can't remember, I think you joined on a bit. Were you in the whole session last time, Jane? I can't remember.
Yeah, I think I was, yeah.
Do you remember we talked about the additional sleep cues?
Yeah, so I tried doing the muslin thing with them, and they were like, what is this doing here? And they it's kind of harder with the 2, because I can't just then put that one back when he pulls it out or whatever, because my arm's pinned over here. But yeah, I did try that. I also I have done shushing with them in the past when they were a bit younger, to help them get off to sleep. So I did start doing that again for a bit. I don't know how much difference that makes. And the patting is also something we've done every now and again. So I was doing that a bit as well. The trouble is I get so sleepy with them, with the feeding, that I just fall asleep. So that initial getting off to sleep isn't so much a problem, but that's when you'd want to be setting the associations, isn't it? So that then when they wake in the night. So yeah, I didn't entirely get on that well with those.
No, that's fine, that's fine. And don't forget, it's only been 2 weeks since we discussed this. So it's something you can continue to build on, and that's what I'd encourage you to do as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any extra support at night at all, Jane, or are you just doing this on your own?
At night, I'm on my own. Like their dad helps me get them to bed, like do the bedtime routine, such as it is. But then during the night, yeah, if one of them was like really screaming or whatever, he would probably come through. But then he doesn't feel able to do that much anyway, because mostly what they're seeking is the boob. So yeah.
And that's again where the additional sleep cues really help, because they give dad those tools as well. Because often dads will be like, yeah, I'm more than happy to help, but I haven't got any breasts. What would you like me to do? So if you've got those additional sleep cues, it gives him other tools to work with, okay, which can make it easier for you if you're trying to get them to settle in another way. Now, in terms of things like kind of what we're looking at here is almost a little bit like some kind of gentle night weaning, but not quite, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like we want to break up it always needing to be feeding back to sleep on mum, but without you wanting to, like, you know, cut all night feeds. So I think it would be absolutely fine for you to maybe bring in, and not forgetting anyone else who's listening, that we are talking about babies who are now 15.5 months. We're not talking about, you know, a very, very tiny baby. If you wanted to start bringing in kind of a bit more of some restrictions around night feeds, I think that would be fine. Okay, so you're saying that they're going to sleep quite nicely. You're then getting about 3 or 4 hours. So would they be waking up usually before midnight? I don't know what time you go to bed.
Right, so we go to bed somewhere between sort of actually like in bed somewhere between 7 and 8 usually, and so yeah, we usually go to around midnight, sometimes 1 o'clock. Yeah.
And then is it after then that you start getting like almost like hourly wake ups, do you, or whatever at that point?
It really varies a lot, but it can be hourly from then. It can be more frequent than hourly. But again, that sometimes I think is because I try and move away my arm too fast, and then they're not in that deep cycle yet, and so they wake up again. And they don't fully wake. That's the thing. They literally wake enough to find the boob. As soon as they're back on the boob, they're basically asleep and, you know, feeding while sleeping. Yeah,
I think if you are ready to kind of move away from that, I think it might be worth looking at. There are a couple ways. You can do this in the family bed. It's absolutely fine. But I would use the additional cues. Or the other way would be to settle them in their own sleep space and move away at that point. So when they go to bed at 7, 8 o'clock, do you go to bed with them then as well? Okay. So I think it would be about kind of changing up that pattern a bit, that you would settle them and then come away at that point. So they're getting used to it. Now that's easier said than done necessarily when you're very tired. I can imagine it's just like by that point we're twins. So I mean obviously we're trying to sort of cover as much as we can in a short space of time here with very limited, you know, information. So I'll just do the best I've got with what I've got here, Jane. But I would suggest there's a couple of ways you can go with it. I can't tell you what to do. You have to decide what works well for your family. So one would be to continue settling exactly as you are. I would suggest then what you would say is you maybe say, okay, if they wake around midnight to 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to feed them at that point, and I'm going to do one other feed before waking up for the day. Okay, so whatever time you get up in the day. About 8 a.m. don't you say get up? Yeah, so before 8 a.m. you're going to do like maybe one more feed. Or if you feel like that's still too much, like that's too quickly, you could say I'll prepare to do 2 more feeds in that time. You know, just to kind of ease them into it gently, and your boobs into it gently too, because they're going to be used to, you know, doing a lot during the day. And all other wake ups, you're going to settle them in other ways. Okay, so that's one way that you can do it. It is helpful to have a partner, and that's why I asked who will help you with this, because it is very hard.
It's not really he's not really going to be available for that. He's got some health issues that mean that he really needs to get his sleep, so that might not be an option. But anyway, I can talk to him. So yeah.
Well, if not him, it might be if your mum is around or something like that, and you've got some support. Alternatively, Jane, is that you do it but you know you've got support the next day.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
yeah.
because when you're starting to make these changes, what I hate people to do is kind of go into it and actually they haven't thought about the next 4 days, what's going on.
Yeah.
Now, if your partner's got loads of work meetings or your mum's not around or whatever, that's just not really helpful. And you're going to have to stop this quite soon because you're going to be too tired.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're having quite unsettled nights for the first, I would say 3 to 4 nights, again, we have to be really realistic. We're changing stuff up. The babies will be a bit more unsettled. It's going to take longer to get them back to sleep. If you know you've got support the next day, so you can get down, or someone can take them off in the morning and deal with breakfast, you can get some more sleep, then you're going to be in a better place. So think of it like that. If you haven't got the help overnight, what have you got the next day that can help you? So that's one way of addressing it. The other way would be you could try and put in a dream feed. Now, dream feed is literally where you would just kind of plug the babies in. So breast or bottle, if anyone's listening to at the moment with this, is that you would go in maybe at kind of 10, 11 o'clock, something like that, and offer them the breast or bottle at that point, let them feed. You don't wake them to feed, you just kind of plug them in basically. So you know that they're getting that feed. This works, I would say, about 50% of the time, and generally you know quite quickly whether or not it's working for your baby. The idea being that you kind of almost reset the sleep cycle a little bit at that point. But then when they wake up at like midnight, for example, you can settle in other ways then, because you know that your baby's had milk. So you're not thinking, oh my God, I feel really guilty because they're starving hungry. Well, no, they're not starving hungry. They're doing it, you know, they're waking for other reasons. And you can settle them then with the other sleep cues. So that's why it's important to try and keep putting them in place if you can. Regardless, though, you can be with your baby and you can be in that moment with your baby and comforting them whilst not always giving them what it is that they immediately want. And that is really hard. And again, please, anyone watching or anyone joining in, we are talking about an older child. We're talking about a baby that's now 15 and a half, or 2 babies that are now 15 and a half months old. We're not talking about a very, very young baby. And this can be a real change up, because in those early days, to get to where you've got to, Jane, you know, being such a successful breastfeeder, it is the case of they ask for it, you give it, you ask for it, you give it. So then when we change things up and we're suddenly kind of going, putting some boundaries in place here, not only can it feel uncomfortable for them, it can feel really uncomfortable for us, can't it? It's just feel like the worst mother in the world. But you're not, okay? Because it's similar that they're going to get to a point where they'll be like, Mum, I want that chocolate, and I want that, and I want that, and I want, you know. And I'm not likening breast milk to chocolate, but we have to start bringing in boundaries, don't we? There's a really great author, Robin Grill. He's the psychologist that I would really recommend if you want to do any reading around parenting. He's got a book called Heart to Heart Parenting, and I've heard him speak. He's a psychologist, and he talks about, you know, how parenting has to change, because if not, can you imagine how entitled our children are going to be? You know, if they're used to just, I ask for it, they get it. And that's why, yes, that is absolutely how we start off our parenting, but it does have to progress. So I always mention that because I know it can sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable. The other thing that so you could offer the dream feed to see how that goes, and then that first wake up, you could then offer other sleep cues, and then go on to say, okay, and then if they wake, and you have to decide what's right for you. I don't know, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm prepared to feed at that point. The other wake ups, I'm going to settle in other ways, and then we move forward to the morning. So this is, again, it's not full night weaning. You can do this in the bed, or you can do it settling in the other sleep space. Like I said, a floor bed is probably what I would suggest, because your babies are used to settling with you, close to you, next to you, etc. You can do that still and then roll away. You can do that through the night and then roll away, because we're talking about you being able to get your sleep space. And one of my feelings, though, is that if that is the goal, that might be quite hard to achieve with you still in the bed with them, because they are going to want to be close to you, because that's just what they do. Okay. Yeah. It's also okay to do part and part. So what some people do is they will start the night with them in their own sleep space and then bring them in at that first feed, or the other way around. Okay. So again, it's all about what works for you, just having lots of different options, really. And my suggestion would be, because I realise, Jane, this is all a bit of a like, oh my God, there's all this stuff coming at me, is that maybe you go back over the recording after we, finished, jot some ideas down of what we've gone over, and then kind of take it away, digest it a bit, maybe sit with your partner and think, where do we want to go with it? What can we put into place? And then come up with a plan. So you really, can be quite thoughtful about it, and then decide, okay, when are we going to make the changes, if indeed you decide to? And you don't have to. This can be something you can do in the future if necessary. So so then, like I said, you've got those 2 different kind of sleep environments to settle into. Another thing you can do, not everybody's very popular with this, but it can work quite nicely if the other suggestion isn't working, is that you wake to feed them. And some people are like, are you joking? Why on earth would I wake myself up? Okay. But with this, what you do is that you, for example, would do a dream feed, and then you would set an alarm. This is going to sound bonkers, right? But bear with me. You would set an alarm, for example, for like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, whenever it is. You wake up, you feed your babies then, yeah. So you know they're getting that milk, so you're not feeling like you're restricting it. But all other wake ups, you settle in other ways. Just quite a quick way to do it, but you don't have that like, am I feeding, am I not feeding? The baby's kind of thinking, well, do I feed from mum in the night or don't I feed from mum at night? Do you see what I mean? You are the person instigating that. And often because that very quickly changes up the pattern of feeding back to sleep each time, that we actually see babies kind of move on quite quickly with that. So that's another suggestion. Generally, it's quite an unpopular one because the idea of waking yourself up in the night is horrendous, but it can work, okay? It works very well as well with early risers. If anyone's watching who's got an early riser, it's getting up at like 4:30 in the morning or something hideous like that. Waking yourself up 15 minutes before they would wake and going in and settling in them at that point can really help kind of move over that sleep cycle and into like the next one. So that it's one way that we do it. It tends to be a last resort because people don't want to do it, understandably. So there's like a few different ideas there to try. The thing is, this is concentrating all on nights, okay? And again, because we're working with an older baby and potentially, this situation could for some parents put them in a real sleep crisis. Waking up every 45 minutes, every hour is just not sustainable, is it, like long term? So that's why I'm kind of concentrating on nights. But what I would say with anybody who's watching this back is that we always do look at the days first. Obviously, Jane, we had that discussion last week a bit more about adding in additional sleep cues and stuff. But you mentioned about their napping. At their age now, 15.5 months, I'd be expecting them to either be on 2 naps or kind of 1 nap a day. But you did say that some days they're just not wanting that second nap. Yeah. So I'd be tempted to say, as a general rule, sack that nap off now if they're not interested in it. You may find that different days, depending on what your night's been like, and that's what I would expect to see. You're in that kind of transitional from like 2 to 1 nap, yeah, which is typical at around 16-ish months. If they need a morning nap, I would stick it in quite early. I would move it further forward than 11 a.m. I would probably, if they're up at 8, I'd go for about 10 and I'd keep it really short, a bit of a kind of micro nap. Okay, so 20-30 minutes, something like that, with a baby that's transitioning into 2 naps. So if you kind of think there's no way we're going to get like by to a lunchtime nap, just put in a little kind of micro nap, then aiming for their longest nap. So like, and I noticed previously we had them here at like 11 o'clock and 3 o'clock, but the longest nap to be around the middle of their day. And I know you said here, you would normally try and nap at 1 or 2 o'clock. But the idea is that they would have kind of a good couple of hours nap at that point in the day, if possible. If that is just not feasible for you, then I do think you need to probably have a shorter one in the morning and then aim for a longer one after lunch. But you kind of want somewhere between, I'm not a massive fan of kind of the nap gaps. Okay, do you know what I mean by nap gaps? So that's basically the time between sleep times. Okay, so some people really focus on this kind of like wake windows or nap gaps. It has to be this long, it has to be this long. I much more encourage people to look to their babies, as we discussed last time, about what signs your baby's showing you they need that. However, it is helpful to have some idea of how long can my baby cope with. And I would suggest in the afternoon, you want probably about 4.5 hours max really before the babies are going down to bed. So just trying to work this backwards. You're going to want them up from about 3 o'clock ready for kind of bedtime at 7, half 7. So the ideal would be that they would have a nap, for example, between kind of 1 till 3. If that is the case, then I would go for a little micro nap probably at about 10 o'clock. Yeah. If you think, no, I can get away with 1 nap today, what you're probably going to need to do with babies at this age is have it a bit earlier than the 1 till 3. You're probably going to need to have quite an early lunchtime, maybe 11:30, 11:45 lunch, down for a nap at about 12. With that nap ideally going on for a good sort of 2.5 hours if possible. I know that probably sounds like, how the hell am I going to do that, Sian, at the moment? And I will talk to you about that in just a moment. So aim for, like I said, that kind of chunkier middle of the day nap, and that being the only nap of the day. Okay, but moving it forward. The other thing is then if the babies have had it by the end of the day, just move your bedtime earlier by half an hour. People are often worried to do that. They think, oh, if I do that, they're not going to sleep as long. But actually, we find quite the opposite. If babies are absolutely exhausted by the time they go to bed, it can be a lot harder. So just don't be afraid to just bring it forward half an hour, move the, shift everything, just a bit more, and then get them into bed. And that's really normal around this age. And that's why I'm not a fan of kind of strict windows of time, etc. So I'm very much a fan of get to know your baby really well and what signs are they showing you, and having that confidence that you know how to move your day around your little ones. With the nap, you're saying at the moment that it's either in the car or in the pushchair. That's absolutely fine. I'm a big fan of on-the-go naps because it makes your life a lot easier, especially now coming into the summer. How lovely, and baby that sleep anywhere. So yeah, pushchair sounds great. If you find they wake up after a certain bit, let's say it always gets like 40 minutes and they wake up, get in there 5 minutes beforehand and rock that pushchair back off again, okay? The other sleep cues are going to help you at this time. Get them in there, get them with, if the muslins aren't working, a little teddy something. And I hear you, loads of people say to me, well, they're just not bothered by them, they just tuck them out. They won't be, you attach it to them, okay? it does, it is a parent-led thing, at the end of the day, if we gave them their choice, they'd just be on your boob the whole time, and that's fine if that's working for you. It's absolutely fine to do, but we live in an environment where you don't have everybody else doing your washing and sorting your house out, etc. So you don't have that choice. And we also don't feed each other's babies, which would be so much easier, wouldn't it? If you'd be like, can you just feed them this afternoon? I'm going to go and do this. And like I said, that is what would be the norm in other communities. So but yeah, so getting them off to sleep in a pushchair is absolutely fine. The other thing is, don't be afraid to get back into bed with them. If you're pooped, which you must be. I'm tired just talking about this, this sounds exhausting. Get into bed with your babies and just settle them and be with them and get that nap happening. Don't get too hung up about how it's happening, just get it happening, okay? And if it means you get some sleep as well, then everyone's a winner. And just have that, getting that long nap to happen is absolutely fine. And then once it starts becoming more regular, and this is the same for anybody who's watching around your baby's napping, just get them happening, just get the naps happening, get them going, get them frequently happening so your baby's not getting horribly overtired and dysregulated. And then you're in a much better place to either change up where they're sleeping, if you want to change up where they're sleeping, or how they're falling asleep. So looking at those other sleep cues. Trying to do those things with an overtired baby in the first place is horrendous, okay? You're battling everything in one go and it's just too much. So if we can just get the naps happening initially, everybody's in a much better place. Again, it can be quite helpful if you're going to do that to think about, have I got, 3-4 day window where I can kind of concentrate on that a little bit and just move my day around so I make sure that nap is happening and getting it more frequently happening. And then you kind of manage any sleep deficit if there is any. You kind of get into a bit more of a pattern with things, and then it's just easier to kind of be more adaptable once that's more regular. How does that sound, Jane? Sorry, I know that's a lot thrown at you all in one go.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
Do you feel like you've got some things to work with there to maybe make some changes? Yeah. Okay. And the thing is, you've done an incredible job. If all you needed to do today was actually just say, this is really hard right now, and I'm not really sure where I want to go, but you're not ready to make changes, that's fine too. Okay, we all need a space to kind of say, this is really tough, but I don't actually really want to change anything yet because I quite like having my baby snuggled up to me. That's fine too. And like I say, you've just done such an incredible job. But yeah, let us know, maybe see, like I say, take away from the session, maybe make some notes, talk to your partner. If you're making changes, let us know what they are next time we meet and where you've got to with it. I'll be really interested to know.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Do you want me to talk a bit about Lisa's situation, Amy? Look at this. I've got 2 cups of coffee on the go here. Here I am talking about sleep. It is decaf, actually. So I'll move on to Lisa's, if that's okay. So just blow it over here. Sorry, it's lovely, isn't it, for your video? Flip back on. And Lisa is saying that she just wants information around normal infant sleep for Florence, who's now 10 months. She follows Florence's leads with sleep, but recently she's not being very tired during the day and she is resisting sleep. She used to have 2 naps a day, one in the morning, a long one in the morning, and a short one around 4 to 5 o'clock. And now it's just one around lunchtime. Now, what I would say is, generally, when it comes to normal infant sleep, really anything kind of goes, I would say, in the first couple of years. I have never, I don't think, dealt with a child where I've thought that's not normal, okay? And if I ever do, then it would normally be something around there's some clear allergy issues going on here, or maybe some sleep pathology, but that is so rare. So just to reassure you really that on the main of it, I generally find that normal infant sleep is just what it is, okay? That doesn't mean you can't improve on things. So in terms of what Florence is doing, Lisa, I would say she sounds very normal. However, 1 nap a day for a 10-month-old baby isn't a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if you were finding that she's getting really pooped and that that's really getting quite tiring for her, and therefore can lead to difficult evenings, difficult bedtimes, and then lead to more frequent overnight wake-ups as well. So I would be suggesting that she would have 2 naps a day, and really looking at about 2 to 3 hours of napping during the day. And I think it'd be really helpful for you now. Up to now, you followed her lead, and that's been absolutely fine. But I think maybe introducing a little bit more of a pattern to naps. I don't like to say scheduled or routine, but a bit more of a pattern. The problem with having a long nap in the beginning of the day, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about sleep pressure. So sleep pressure builds throughout the day. It's our drive to fall asleep. We all have it. And as adults, generally, we're not as tired as we are right now as new mums, but we can get to the end of the day and the sleep pressure rises and we go to sleep. With babies, their sleep pressure rises quicker. They need to have the naps in order to get off to bedtime. If Florence is waking and then having a really, really long nap in the morning, well, firstly, I would say she's obviously waking up reasonably tired. Her sleep pressure is still quite high. So that's why it'd be quite interesting to kind of think about how you can juggle this. The other thing I want to say, Lisa, is I've obviously never met you. I've not met Florence, and I've just got this little bit of information I'm going off. So hopefully it's going to speak to you and you'll know what I'm getting at. If Florence knocks off all that sleep pressure at the beginning of the day, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you're having early mornings and regular night wakings as well. And then it's really hard to get in a second nap because she's knocked off so much sleep pressure. And then that second nap isn't happening till much later in the day. And then she's knocking off a bit of sleep pressure then, which is just maybe possibly affecting bedtime because you haven't then got quite enough sleep pressure for that. And then it's all just kind of, it just kind of messes it all up a little bit. At 10 months old, I would be suggesting that you have a short morning nap and that you would kind of intervene with that, okay? So again, I would go for a couple of hours after waking, look for her cues, but around 2 hours is going to be ideal. She is at the age, I mentioned sleep windows or wake windows or nap gaps earlier, where a lot of people will follow, can't remember if I talked about this last time, Robin, but the 2, 3, 4 nap gaps. Okay, now that's not an exact science, but it works quite well, happens to work quite well around this age. Is that ideally kind of go for about 2 hours from wake up to the first nap. When they wake from that nap, and I would wake them after the first sleep cycle, I would go for about 40 minutes maximum, because if not, you're going to really struggle to get a second nap in. Wake them at 40 minutes and go 3 hours. So you've had your 2 hours, and then your 3 hours before your next sleep, and then have a nice long, chunky, middle of the day nap. Get it by any means possible. If it means laying with your baby initially, great, because you'll get a sleep as well. Or if it's a pram or a sling walk or whatever it is that you do, and then approximately 4 hours before then bedtime. Okay, so that's before they kind of get into bed. So you want to think about, okay, so I'm going to start dinner at this time and then bedtime routine, half an hour, for example, for that. So that might just give you a bit of structure to try. Always go back to what your baby's signs are and what it is that they're showing you around those timings, which will give you a bit of an idea. So that's what I would suggest for Florence at 10 months, and just see how that goes. I would be thinking about things like sleep hygiene and stuff. Sleep hygiene isn't how clean they are when they get into bed. 10 months are pretty filthy, let's be honest, by the time they get into bed. It's to do with that lead up to sleep, okay, and how does that feel, and what kind of stuff can you put in place. So things like a nice bedtime, calming bedtime routine and stuff would be ideal for Florence at the age of 10 months as well, which we can cover more maybe next session. We can talk over bedtime routine in a bit more detail if necessary. So they're the 2 I've got today. I don't know if anyone wants to pop on, or if you want me to cover anything in particular, or discuss a little bit more about what we went over last time.
I imagine that the ladies here are here because they have a question. So Corinne, or who've got, Christina or Alana? Anybody available to ask a question? Imagining, yeah, totally. They're now running around. There we are, Alana.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
I'm still laying in bed. She's just fallen asleep, so I won't put my camera on if that's okay. But so I've got Clemmy here. She's what is she now? She's 11 weeks tomorrow. And I've just gotten this past week. We've done now 5 nights where she slept in her crib next to me all night long. So
Wow.
I've just taken her out to feed her and then put her back in, which I wasn't doing previously. She was sleeping in the bed with me. She takes a little while to settle, so she'll fall asleep on the boob, and then I'll have to pick her up and sort of, it will wake her up, put her down, and then it will take me between sort of 10-20 minutes to get her to properly settle, but she will go back to sleep in there. But in the daytime is where I'm having the problem, where I'm trying to get her to nap in wherever, but without me holding her. So we've got a cot downstairs, or it might be in the bed if I haven't got up yet, or it might be back in her bedside cot. But that is where she tends to be waking up, eyes wide open as soon as I put her down. I only heard or joined in half the way on your last session, but I did watch it back, and I've tried putting a certain muslin around her in daytime naps. We've got a lot of bum patting going on and shushing. And she does tend to have a dummy in the daytime, but not at nighttime. So I'm trying to, give all these sleep cues like you suggested, but so it just seems to be whenever I try and put down the day, she's bolt wide awake.
Okay, well, firstly, Alana, totally normal, and also I love her name, Clemmy. That's so sweet.
Oh.
So 11 weeks, she's still really new. You're still in that kind of 4th trimester bit, okay, where she's kind of not really that sure that she's even a separate person yet. So what you're describing is really, really normal. I mean, if she was sleeping in the bed with you the whole night, etc., it'd still be really normal. But it sounds like perhaps you wanted that extra space, and she's settling really nicely in there at bedtime. So that's working really well, isn't it, for you at the moment? With the daytime sleeps, I think, honestly, it's so normal. I imagine anybody who's watching this who's got, who's a bit further on will be like, yeah, I remember those days. I wouldn't worry about it long term. I would probably, is she your only child at the moment, Alana?
Yes, yeah.
Honestly, I would be soaking up those naps and those cuddly times with her as much as you can, okay? Because they don't last forever. You'll be really surprised how quickly. And when you have another one, you don't get that same time, do you? It kind of
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, so try not to worry about it. A lot of people worry about it, and then they sort of, they're cuddling their babies and thinking, oh, this is lovely, and then they're like, oh no, I must put them down. You don't need to, okay?
Okay.
Just to reassure you with that. If you want to be able to do that, that's fine too. And it sounds like you've kind of worked on that overnight. So you've managed to kind of do that overnight. It's working for you. I would keep going with those sleep cues, and don't be like, oh, I've done for 2 weeks and they're not working. They will build up. They will build up. Okay. So, just to give you some example, my little one is 5 months. So, a whole another host on, and we've been doing this since day one. And I don't expect to see her have great connotations with them just yet, but we are seeing that you pop the muslin on or whatever, and you start to see the eyes start to go straight away. So it does come in. It's it's building. You're building on those neural pathways all of the time. Okay, so just kind of stay with it, even if you're not feeling like you're immediately seeing any changes. I wouldn't expect that anyway. And then I would, with her at this stage, there's a couple of ways you can think about this. Is that one is that you wait till she gets in that really deep sleep. Okay, so it'll probably take a good sort of 20 minutes or so to see that happen, because at this stage Clemmy will be going between deep sleep and REM sleep. Now the deep sleep, you can tell sometimes by just, even if you just put your finger in their hand, if they're in a deep sleep they'll kind of let it go. If they're in a REM sleep, they'll still be reactive enough that they will hold your finger. The other thing to watch for is in REM sleep is rapid eye movement sleep. You will literally see, the movement, whatever, the breathing can be quite shallow and a bit all over the place. When they're in a deep sleep, you feel like you could tie them in knots. Yeah, do you know what I mean? When they're just like, oh, they're properly gone. So I would probably wait for that before you put her down. That's one way to try it, and put her down with those other sleep cues. The other way would actually be to catch her really early on. So as she's just about to fall asleep, put her down with those sleep cues, because different babies are going to react in different ways. So I would, try to choose one and see which one works for her, and if you see any changes, and then you just, continue to settle her in that sleep space like that. Sometimes things like a pushchair can be a really handy place if you want her to nap separate from you, because you can rock and you can do those a bit easier. I'm not a massive fan of getting little tiny babies napping in cots and cribs and stuff during the day. For one, Alana should be with you at all sleep times as well because of her age.
Yeah.
And I know no one likes to talk about sudden infant death syndrome, but I have a duty to tell you that in the first 0 to 6 months that she should be in the same room as you. So I'd either get back into bed with her and snuggle her up, or have her in a room with you somewhere. Like I said, a pushchair is ideal because you can rock her off and stay with her, or a sling. Have you ever tried a sling with her and popped her in there for naps?
Yeah, I have a few times, but every time I put her in this thing, she gets confused and she starts looking for food.
Okay.
And then so she starts head banging, and then she gets quite worked up and starts crying because she's confused why she's not getting food, and she won't. She just won't relax her head onto my chest.
Okay. Have you tried feeding her first and then putting her in it?
No, I haven't actually. I've always tried to put her in it when she's getting sleepy.
Okay, so I would give her the feed first for sure. Yeah, and you may find that she then falls asleep on the feed, and then you kind of have to sort of put her then in and start again, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, I would definitely give her a feed first as well. And a lot of people worry about feeding off to sleep with a tiny baby, 11 weeks old. I would say it's very, very normal, but it's really helpful to have those other sleep cues kind of going on as well. And so, for example, you could feed Clemmy first, get her, she'll probably be quite drowsy after then, or at least she'll be nice and full, pop her in the sling, and then you can do the patting, you can do the shushing, and you can even pop a muzzle in between you and her at that point. So that's something she gets used to holding or whatever. One of the things I do a lot, even mine now, is get her in the sling, and then I actually put the muslin like over her head and over the top of the sling, so it's kind of here, so it blocks out any of, because they tend to sort of, they're too busy, aren't they? Does that and helps with that association. The other thing then you can do, if you then get to a point you think, oh no, I really do need to be able to put her down, that's something I want to work towards. And that's why I mentioned, like when I talked to Jane earlier, what are your sleep goals? That is really important to think, what is your goal, because we all have different ones. Is that you can actually then kind of wrap off the sling and put her down very gently with the muslin, with the other sleep cues that you've used to get her to sleep once she's in a deep sleep. So that's another way to do it. Okay.
So would you suggest I've got one of the wrap slings, to put that on me before I feed her?
Yeah, you can do, because sometimes then if she's sort of getting cross because she's asleep or been woken up and you're then sort of doing quite tricky, Some mums can feed in slings. I can't, and I think that's really dependent on so many different variables. It really is, and like even as far as down to like what your breast tissue is like. Okay, so basically, like if you can move your boobs enough, then you can often feed in a sling as well. Some mums find that really great, but yeah, you probably find it'd be easier to have it on ready, feed her, and then get her into that, and then and if she's a bit unsettled initially, some babies can be when they first go in a sling, it's just different. I always suggest get them in it and just go immediately straight outside for a walk, even if that's just around the garden, okay? Because you've got the movement, you yourself will start to be distracted, even if you're not aware of it, because there'll be other things going on, like, I don't know, bird or something, and or whatever, or you'll start thinking about something. So you immediately start to relax as well, which really helps, rather than that focus of like, I've got to get this baby off to sleep, which just makes the whole situation more stressful and they pick up on it. The other thing is just that change in environment as well really helps with the babies. So that would be a way to get her off to sleep in there. And I would definitely say at this age, that would be what I would expect to see. Everything you're describing just makes me think, yeah, perfect. Clemmy's a really normal 11-week-old baby. And like I said, I just also would really encourage you to, as much as you can, if it feels good for you, to embrace those naps as well, to snuggle her and enjoy that time, because you don't get it back. My 12-year-old won't let me near him anymore. And you will look back on those times and think, those days where I just snuggled on the sofa with him and stuff. And when you have subsequent children, I promise you those times are some of the most special times, and you just think, oh, I wish I could do this all the time.
Yeah. To be honest, it was my mum that's sort of pushing me to put it down, because I kept thinking it's me, it's my fault, I'm being selfish and wanting to cuddle her all night particularly, and I don't want to put her in the cot, but we're not sleeping very well, but actually we were sleeping fine. I just wake up a bit less achy because I'm not stuck in, you know, one position with my arms above my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I will try and embrace the daytime hugs a little bit longer, but
and that's often actually what we hear, is that mums are actually quite happy with it, but what's happening is that they've got, you know, and it often is the voice of maybe a mother or something, but it ends up kind of being this thing sort of chipping away on their shoulder saying, you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. I had a mum contact me yesterday. I'd put on my Instagram stories that I was, I don't know, rocking my baby off to sleep in the pushchair, and I was saying how normal it was, alongside how normal it was that I had piles and piles of washing on my table. But and she messaged me and said, I'm so glad you said that. I've been doing this with my little one today and I felt so guilty. I was thinking, where does this guilt come in? Why are we feeling guilty about settling our babies? It's so normal and so natural and absolutely what you should be doing. And I would say the majority of cultures around the world, sleeping next to your baby would be totally normal. Not forgetting that sadly, even, you know, in this day and age, some babies are living in war zones. Now, if those babies were put down to sleep by themselves, they would not be safe. They wouldn't sleep next to their mums, and in different countries, environments, etc., you know, they get eaten by a wild animal. So it is entirely normal. There is a lovely little book. I've got so many books behind me, so I'll just see if I can spot it. If not, I'll just tell you what it is. No, there it is. By Dr. James McKenna, and it's not horribly big. It's called Sleeping with Your Baby. So I think that's going to come at you back to front, but Sleeping with Your Baby, a parent's guide to co-sleeping. And this is so lovely, okay? And it really talks about what we call breast sleeping as well. So a bit like what Jane's baby's been doing, breast sleeping, really, kind of sleeping with a boob there. So normal, and a very normal way for your baby to sleep. So yeah. And when it comes to grandparents telling you things, so baby's grandparents, not yours, your mother-in-laws, one of the things we have to remember is that they came from a different, you know, I mean, I don't know how old you are, but like I'm in my 30s, so my mum had me in the 80s. That was very much a bottle feeding culture. You fed your baby every 4 hours. That's just what you did, and you put your baby aside, or you left them to cry and whatever, and that's what they were told to do. So that's what they did. But similarly, we treated lots of other things differently in the 80s. If we still treated cancer patients like we did in the 80s, they would be crazy, wouldn't it, right? And we wouldn't want to do that. We know so much more. And we now know so much more of the research we have about babies, about infant sleep, about feeding, etc. But for a parent to hear that what they did 30 plus years ago was wrong for their child that they love dearly is a really hard message. So sometimes I think it can be really helpful when we're talking to our parents to say, you know, I know that that's what you did and that's what you were told to do, and I know that you did the very best for me, but we know so much more now because the research has come on. And explain it, things like, you know, that's why we treat this symptom differently, that's why we understand more about meningitis, that's why we understand more about this, that and the other. And I know infant sleep isn't a pathology, it's not an illness, but when they think of it like that, it takes away the guilt that they might be feeling about you doing different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's really good, thank you.
Because I always think, like, in 30 years, if someone tells me that, oh, you know, you shouldn't really have been doing it like that, that isn't right, I'll be like, oh, I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
So I think it can feel quite tricky sometimes, but you sound like you're doing a super job.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to jinx it, but she's quite a good, you know, good sleeping baby.
Yeah.
Particularly at night time, she will go back to sleep. It's just she doesn't like to be on her own so much, which is completely understandable.
Yeah.
I'm just enjoying while she is wanting to sleep more than she's awake, so I can, you know, just rest.
Definitely that is your main job right now, is to get some rest in. Definitely, she's still really new. I think when they're at 11 weeks you feel like you've had them like 11 years, but she's still really new. So yeah, just soak that time up and enjoy her. You sound like you're doing a super job.
Oh, thank you very much.
Welcome. Does anybody else have any other questions?
There was a message in the chat, Sian. I think Corin's put it in there. Do you get it?
Oh yeah, I have a question, but trying to get little one to resettle. We have managed daytime napping, blackout and white noise, etc. But going out is a whole other story. I've brought a blackout thing to go, white noise, comfort, etc. But he refuses. Now everything is opening up again. I'm worried about going out. Also change in routine. School started again, which means car journey 45 minutes, 7:30 and 1:30, which is now interrupted on that routine. Thank you so much. Can anyone tell me how old Corin's baby is? Sorry, I don't, maybe I've got it on here.
I think he's about 6 months.
Okay. Well, firstly, with daytime naps, I don't think I wouldn't be doing the blackouts and things like that. Okay. With any little one, especially oh, there you go, Corinne, you're there. Sorry, I didn't know if you'd gone out. Yeah, I wouldn't be doing blackout blinds. For one, it's going to make napping out and about really, really difficult. Okay, so when we talk about like the additional sleep cues and stuff like that, blackout is going to be great overnight, but you actually kind of you want to, around 6 months, your baby's circadian rhythm is quite nicely set in now. So basically understanding day from night, they're producing their own melatonin. When we then put babies in dark rooms during the day, it kind of messes that up a bit. Okay, so I would keep them in the daylight. I would keep the broad spectrum daylight going on, and encourage him to nap in that sleep space. So maybe at night time you're having the blackout, the white noise and what have you is going on, but during the day I would change that up. I would add in the other sleep cues, like we said, maybe like just a sleepy time phrase, a muslin or something he has, a bit of shushing before he goes down, and encourage him to sleep somewhere that's going to be much more easy for you. Joe, just putting in here that he has a car journey at 45 minutes at 7:30. Does he nap at that time then? Will he nap at that 7:30 drive? Just wait and see if Corinne can pop in the chat at all. Because I don't know what your current nap routine is that has been interrupted. And at 6 months, I'd be suggesting a minimum of 3 naps. Okay, so he'll nap at that time. And does he nap when he first, I mean, at what time are you up for the day, Corinne? About 6, half 6. Okay, so that might work quite well, really. And so I would suggest that you try and keep him awake when you leave at 7:30. But by the time you've gone and then you come back, that works out a really perfect, ideal first nap. Okay, for that morning nap. And then you've got another one at about 1:30. So what I would probably suggest to do, I don't know if you're able to pop on at all, Corinne, but if because it's sort of hard, obviously, trying to decipher it through here. It'd be easier if we can talk, but okay. Yeah, so sorry. So what would work quite well with this little one is, he's getting up 6, half 6, going off, and then a car drive, 45 minutes. If you can try and keep him awake on the car drive there, great. And then either when you get there, maybe go out, for a walk in the pushchair or something to have a nap, or if you're driving straight home or driving onto a group or something like that, that's a great time to get that first nap in place there for about 45 minutes. That's perfect. And then I would suggest you do something really nice in the morning, do lots of nice activities and stuff. And then you're picking up, are you, at 1:30?
Sorry, I'm here now.
Hi,
so we'll leave the house about 1:30. We've got live half an hour away from my older son's school.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
we'll leave home about 1:30.
So what time, you say about a napping routine, what would be your normal napping routine at the moment?
So prior to school starting again, he would be up about 7:30 and then go down about 10:30 and have a couple of hours, and then he'd do maybe an hour and a half in the afternoon.
Okay. Well, I'd be moving that around anyway, probably. And I think you can probably fit this in quite nicely with your current routine. So do you remember, I don't know if you were here earlier when I was talking about knocking off all that sleep pressure early in the day?
Yeah, he was screaming at the time, so I briefly heard it.
Okay, so it can be really tricky, and maybe if you can hear the recording back, but if you knock off all that sleep pressure early in the day, it's really hard to get those other naps in, isn't it? And then you just end up with like a short one in the afternoon, the baby's absolutely lost it by bedtime. So I would suggest what's happening at the moment is that that you get him in the car for this 7:30 whatever, but you encourage the nap ideally to be on the way back, which is going to be easier because on the way there you've got other kids who can keep poking him.
Okay.
Keep him awake, right? So lots of singing, lots of like, woo, we're gonna keep going. So the little one then has the nap on his own on the way home from the school run at 7:30. Or I'm assuming you leave the school run about 8ish, for example. Is that about right?
Yeah, about 8:15.
Perfect. Okay, so then encourage that nap at that point for about 45 minutes. So that's either going to take you till you get home or going to take you perhaps on to somewhere else as we get out and about a bit more, as you mentioned. So that's your first nap done. Okay, great. It works in really, really well. The second nap of the day, I'm going to guess 1:30 might be a little bit late. You might find he's getting a bit too tired by then and you leave at 1:30. So it might be that what you do is you have an early lunch. If he's really pooped, you could try and aim for kind of a 12 to 1:30 nap. for him. You could try and do that and try and get it to happen beforehand. And I would get it happening by any means. And I really wouldn't be worrying about the blackouts and all that stuff. It's going to be exhausting trying to do it. Do you have 2 other children as well, Corinne?
No, just the one.
Just the one, sorry. So it's always hard as well, isn't it? Kind of getting it around them. So I would either go for you've only had that short morning nap in the car on the way home. So it's easier then for you to get that longer nap later. So for example, I say go between 12 and 1:30 and then go out in the car. Go and get your little one, and then have another short cat nap later in the day. Because you're going to be having that kind of lunchtime nap is perhaps going to be cut a little bit short than what it would be otherwise. I'd probably be aiming for about maybe 3:30, something like that, that you would have another kind of 40-minute nap at that point with your little one, and then leading on to bedtime just to see them through. So that's probably how I would do that around those journeys. So then like your middle of the day nap between 12 and 1:30. This is to give you some idea of where to work with. Obviously, you've got to tweak within that what suits you and your little ones. I'd be trying to have that in the pushchair or, anywhere really, for all the reasons you said, like everything's, going out and about more, etc. And then you're going to be moving into things like school holidays, and you're not going to want to be stuck at home and having to say to your other son, sorry, was it 2 boys? Did you say?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
You don't have to say to him, "I'm sorry, we can't go out with such and such because your little one needs, because the youngest one needs to nap." Whereas if around 12 o'clock he can nap in the pushchair. Oh, there he is. Hello. Then that would be what I would suggest. How does that sound? Does that sound like you could fit that into your day?
Yeah, the naps seem okay. It's just how do I try and transition out of blackouts if that's what he's used to?
Well, that should, I would imagine, happen quite quickly, because I said the problem with doing blackouts in the day is you can then kind of mess up the circadian rhythm stuff a bit, because when it's dark, it helps kick in the melatonin, which is not what we want in the day. We want to really regulate the circadian rhythm best that we can. So I would just take it out and just get the naps happening by any means, which if it means, initially, it's Jane's babies that are right in the camera. Hello. Oh, look at them. I don't know what I think about this, Sean. I'm not taking anything you're saying. I'm going to feed all night long. Yeah, so honestly, Corinne, I would be getting those naps by any means necessary. Get them used to another way of settling. So either in the pushchair, if it happens in the car initially, then that's fine too. Just because you're going to get stuck, aren't you, with these blackout blind naps, that it's a pain, isn't it? And then what do you do when your other one's at home and that kind of stuff? Is there any other sleep cues at all that your little one has, like during the day?
No, he has a comforter which he uses, and yeah, he will go to sleep, but he'll only do 30 minutes. So he can sleep on me by feeding, or he will go in the car. But still, even if we're on an hour-long journey, he still only do that 30 minutes.
Yeah, which is going to fit in fine with the morning nap. So what I would do is bring in like a little sleepy phrase as well. Also, 6 months is still really new. Okay, that. We've already got one. How quickly it goes. 6 months is really, really young. And I'll be honest, around 6 months is generally the earliest I expect to start to see some kind of pattern to naps, actually, that's really worth doing. I'm not saying it doesn't happen with other babies sooner, but often by doing it sooner, it doesn't make sense, because it just takes ages and then they change up so quickly. 6 months is a great time to start thinking about that. So if you've got, for example, from 12 till 1:30 before you're then going to leave the house, if you know that he will sleep on you, I would suggest you try and get that happening at that point. If it's sleeping on you initially, then that's what it is, and you try and embrace that and enjoy that time just to sit down before you have to go get the other one, and then go out of the house so you know he's had that nap. The half-an-hour nap on the way back in the morning is going to be absolutely perfect in terms of timing, because what you want to do is build enough sleep pressure that you can then get these bigger naps happening. If you're knocking off a lot of sleep in the morning, and you're going to really struggle to get a later one as well. I hope that makes sense, Corinne. But that's definitely how I would change up that routine, and I think it could fit quite nicely into your day as well around that.
Have you got any tips on getting them to go longer than half an hour, or is it just one of those things that we just need to stick with?
Yeah, it's really normal to
okay.
sort of catnapping kind of thing. And I would say if your little one does like half an hour, so let's say, you know, you get him down at 12 and he goes to sleep, but he only has half an hour. Well, then, you know, you're going back out in the car again at 1:30. So he'll probably have a decent nap, even if it's just half an hour then. And then you're probably going to need to do an extra one at the end of your day as well. That more consolidated nap in the middle of the day, it will happen. It just will happen as he gets crawling, walking, all of those things, gets more tired and using up more of that energy. That's going to happen too. So not forgetting it's, I mean, my little one's only now, like, she's 5.5 months. They don't do a lot still at 6 months, do they? You know, they might sort of roll around the floor a bit, but they're not doing lots. They're not on the go so much. And when they are, that's when we start to see, you know, these sort of chunkier naps happening as well. So don't worry about it, is what I'd say.
Okay, thank you.
If you get him off to sleep in a pushchair or on you or whatever, and he wakes up at that, you know, 35-minute mark or whatever, and you're like, oh man, I know you need longer, don't be afraid to put them back on the boob or rock the pushchair again, or do whatever you need to do to tide them over into the next nap, into the next sleep cycle.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I don't know if we've got any other questions.
I don't know if I heard.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, you kind of just answered it, Sian. But I was just thinking, is it? Oh, she's starting to grunt. Is it about 6 months when I should be sort of worrying as such how long she naps during the day? So at the minute, I don't time it. I don't sort of think, oh right, it's 11 o'clock, she's due a nap. She just sort of sleeps when she wants, when she sort of gives me the cues that she's tired, and for however long she's asleep for. Is that correct thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely. At her age, she's quite little yet, so she's not going to be able to go like a very, very long time before needing another nap. I would say at that age 1 to 1.5 hours maximum. But you're doing exactly the right thing to look at. And the reason I mention it, and it sounds like you've got this nailed, to be honest, Alana, and you're doing everything you need to do, is that sometimes I'll go out to people and I suddenly say, oh God, feeding's a nightmare. It's all suddenly gone to pieces. I don't know what's happening. And actually, I'm looking at these babies, it's not a feeding issue. They're just so tired that they've just lost it, yeah? And it can look like a feeding issue or whatever. So you're doing exactly the right thing, as you said. I'm looking to her cues. She's having a nap at that point. Spot on. That's exactly what you should be doing. She's 11 weeks old. Some babies at 11 weeks old will be kind of ready for an earlier bedtime. They might be like, oh, you know, you might get to 8, 9 o'clock and you're like, yeah, they really are ready to get into bed now. Others will be sitting up with you till 11 o'clock for several months and then going to bed. That's also fine, totally normal. Not forgetting, again, in other cultures, that would be totally normal. That is what they would do. Everyone would have a siesta in the afternoon and then go to bed late anyway. So yeah, around 6-ish months, which is when you start obviously the weaning and things like that. If parents are finding that sleep is becoming a bit of an issue or they're having difficulties with it, that's when I start suggesting we look at more regular naps and more regular pattern of naps. You said, at what point should I start worrying about it? I would say never. You never need to worry about it, okay? If it's working for you, it is working. If you never have to think, oh, if you always think, oh, I have no idea when Chloe naps, she naps when she's tired and she feeds when she's hungry and it works for us and we're all getting the sleep we need and we're all happy, never have to worry about it. If you're getting to that kind of stage and you're thinking, I feel like I'd like a bit of a pattern, or or sleep's just kind of gone a bit iffy, that's when I suggest thinking about, having some kind of pattern to your day. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, it did, because she has sort of fallen into her own rough pattern of between 8 and 9 o'clock. She screams the house down for about 20 minutes, where she goes into that I'm tired, it's nighttime sort of pattern, and then she will be quite good all night long, as I sort of said earlier. Okay. And in the daytime she'll get to the point where she gets so grizzly, I know she's tired, so I'll rock her, she'll sleep, she'll eat when she wants. And
perfect. So what I would say with that, Alana, did you hear the previous session? I can't remember, sorry, for you included.
I heard half of it.
Okay, so in that one we were talking about spotting those cues a little bit earlier, okay, and we talked a little bit about the zones of regulation. So when your baby's in a kind of green zone, that's when they're good to go. The blue zone is when they're kind of nice and settled, ready to sleep yet. He sounds a little bit like Clemmy is getting into the kind of yellow zone, and at night time maybe kind of the red zone before she's falling asleep. And I would say, just in kind of readiness for when her sleep cycles change, just see if you can watch her and spot her before it gets to that stage. You know, like you said, oh, I know she's getting really grizzly, and then I rock her off to sleep. Just watch her. What does she do before the grizzly stage? How could you know before she gets grumpy and before she gets grizzly that actually she's given you the signs ready to fall asleep? And I can't tell you what they're going to be because I don't know your baby. And this is where you really get to know your baby. And this is a lovely thing that you can do. You start to spot, what does Clemmy show you when she's dysregulating? And dysregulating can come for different reasons. With a tiny baby, it tends to be because they're getting tired or hungry or whatever. And it's a real tool that you can then use so that longer term, when you are thinking about, you know, when your naps are going to happen, etc., you can spot those things really easily. And for some babies, that can be really, really clear, and some of it's trickier. So just watch her. And in the evening, you said she gets to the point, she's like, oh, I've had it. Yeah. Spot her again. It sounds like you're getting a bit of a kind of, it's about 8, 9 o'clock. That's what she does. So that's helpful because you've got some kind of time to think about, to kind of start looking. About 20 minutes before that, start watching her. What is she doing? What is she showing you that maybe would give you the earlier signs before she reaches that kind of, I've really had enough.
Yeah, I think I was trying to do that earlier because I was holding her and I had no clue what she wanted, but she's got to the point where she just sort of, she's found her voice a bit, and she's just sort of, she's not crying, she's just shouting and making noise.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, well, are you just excited? Are you awake? Are you, happy and just talking? Yeah. Or are you getting tired? It's at the point now where it's a little bit harder to tell what emotion it is.
And that's really normal to kind of go, I don't know what the hell she wants. And that's where, you start to get to know your baby. And that's where, some of the ideas around timing can be helpful. So like I said, you're looking at about an hour and a half with a young baby at her age where she's going to start getting tired. So if you kind of think, well, you've only been up 20 minutes and I think it's really okay, she's perhaps just excited or whatever. If she's starting to get a bit squealy and you're thinking, actually, you've been awake for 2 hours, you might be thinking, oh, crumbs, actually, I think maybe we've kind of missed a few key or whatever, or you're starting to give me those signs that you're kind of getting that way. So, I mean, I've got 4 children. They're all so different. One of them is, if she gets tired, she just starts kind of glazing, and then very quickly she gets really grumpy. One of mine, I call her my unicorn baby because she's just amazing. I've had like 20 of them. She would just get more and more excitable. She would just get really squealy and just excitable. And it was like so clear that actually that was her tired. Well, I say it was so clear it was her tired cue. When I realised what was happening. I meet a lot of parents who are like, oh my God, they'll just be up for hours and they're so happy and they're just so excitable. And it's like, actually, this child's just like absolutely wired, but they're just really happy babies. So that's what they do. So again, it's just really helpful to start watching. They're all so different in terms of what they give you. But I would look at, if you're spotting, for example, let's say, 8 o'clock every night, she's really starting to lose her squid around that time. I would say 20 minutes before then, just start watching her, maybe get her ready for kind of getting down for bed at that point, starting to kind of calm the situation down, maybe get yourself popped into bed with her and start feeding her, and just see if you can miss that screaming bit and get her falling asleep nice and gently. Because when you start to spot that, you will find as she moves into that kind of 4-month mark where their sleep cycles change up a lot, you're in a great position to kind of not really have to deal with any of this. They talk about the 4-month sleep regression. Often we see sleep can be a bit more up and down at that point as things are changing. But if mums and parents are kind of being able to spot those cues nice and early on, they don't really see much change and they can move through it quite quickly. So you're at a great point now to start doing that.
So you think that sort of 7:30ish when she's sort of due her scream, try a bit of a bedtime routine as such, because I've started doing that, but I don't bath her very often because she's got very dry skin, so the only sort of bedtime routine we've really got is putting on some pajamas, change of nappy and a cuddle.
Perfect. Yeah, you don't want anything longer than that. And I'm not a big fan of having bath in every bedtime routine anyway, especially not at this age, because it just tires them out. And if they're already tired, Yeah, I would just do something really, really gentle. You mentioned about dry skin as well. Has
Yeah.
that been a concern the whole way through?
It's getting a little bit worse, to be honest. She's got quite bad cradle cap, but she's got a fairly sort of flaky, dry skin on her face. Doesn't seem to really bother her. I don't think she does when she's tired. Sort of rub her face a little bit and smack herself in the head a little by accident.
Okay.
But I don't think she's trying to scratch it. I think she's just sort of rubbing her eyes.
Okay. How is she fed, Alana?
Breast.
Okay. Do you have any history of allergy or anything in your family?
No, a bit of eczema.
Right. Okay. It might be worth just having a look at kind of what's going on there, because we often find that babies that are presenting with skin issues, that there can be something going on there that they're reacting to. Okay. I'm not suggesting you go on some kind of crazy diet or anything immediately. It's just helpful to maybe keep an eye on it. Eczema can be very, very strongly correlated to this kind of thing as well. We often find mums that cut out things like cow's milk protein, see a change. Okay. So what are her stools like?
I suppose quite normal, really, just still yellow runny baby poos.
Okay. It's just something, I don't want you to panic about it. Just have it in the back of your mind, okay? That if things worse, and you mentioned about them worsening as well, just keep in the back of your mind, if you start to see other symptoms play up or anything that concerns you, then I would perhaps, get in touch about kind of, more kind of specialist feeding stuff, and it might be worth looking a little bit at if there's any kind of intolerance or something going on. Okay?
Yeah, so she was vomiting quite a lot, but actually this past week, touch wood, she's just had a little tiny bits of spit up rather than full stomach emptying episode. So I think it might be getting a little bit better in her digestive system in that respect.
Did you have any antibiotics or anything like that post-birth for her or you?
Yes, I did in the first week for my stitches.
Okay. So I would just have it in the back of your mind, just keep an eye on it. If you find it worsens, we can always talk about this next time. We're coming back on, I think, I don't know, like 4 weeks or something. But obviously, if you need to discuss things before then, just let me know or let Robin know or something, and we can sort something out. But it's just worth noting. It's always worth noting around sleep as well, if you start seeing a lot of sleep interruptions, because the cortisol that keeps us going during the day also acts as a bit of like an antihistamine as well. So babies who have got intolerances, allergic stuff going on, or something that's going on in their gut, like an intolerance, for example, an allergy, will often see more disturbances at night as well. So there's so much, and like I said, it's not to panic you, Alana, it's just to be aware of. I work very holistically, so when I hear something like that, we look at this whole picture, and interestingly, you've got eczema then coming in, from a family history as well. So to me, there's like little bits that I'm just thinking, okay, we just need to be aware of this. And if things worsen or don't improve, or mum's seeing other symptoms, then I think my next suggestion would be something like cutting cow's milk protein and soya. I generally suggest cutting the two together, because 50% of babies with like a cow's milk protein intolerance often react to soya. So I generally suggest cutting the two, seeing where you're at in about 2 to 3 weeks time, seeing if the skin is improving or any other symptoms are improving, like the vomiting, for example. Some babies will experience things like refluxy symptoms, that kind of thing, and then see where you're at, and then sometimes reintroducing the soya to see if that is an issue. And cow's milk protein is in so many things, so it's not just like, I cut dairy, so I cut milk, but actually I'm still eating biscuits and cakes and things like that. You have to be really, really quite aware, which I won't lie, it's a bit of a pain, which is why I'm not suggesting you go and panic buy like this afternoon loads of things. It's just something to be aware of. I just want to give you enough information.
Yeah, no, thank you. I will keep an eye on it. Thank you.
That's awesome. Sian, you are amazing.
I don't know about that.
It's just so much information and really useful, valuable stuff. So thank you so much. That's awesome.
No worries. I hope it's been helpful to everybody. Do feel free to ping over your questions for next time.
Sorry, I have my baby here making noise. That's not me, I promise. I do. Yeah, I'll get everybody to send questions and stuff. Yep, Papa. So we'll be in touch. But thank you so much, Sian, and look forward to seeing you again next month.
Yeah, see you all soon. Do you want me to hang fire, Robin, or do you want me just to log off?
Either way is good. Maybe hang fire just so I can say thank you. It'd be great.
Okay, that's fine.
And I shall end that recording.